All right, let's dive into a really fascinating ancient Taoist text. It's got a lesson inside that is so counterintuitive, it might just completely change how you look at your own flaws. We're going to explore this wild idea that the very things we consider poisons, things like greed and anger, might actually be our greatest hidden treasures.
So, the whole thing opens with this absolutely incredible cosmic scene. You've got this divine being, the celestial worthy, and he's just bathing the entire universe in this brilliant, nourishing light. It's getting into every nook and cranny, every tiny speck of dust. Literally everything is illuminated by truth and wisdom. It's a picture of total perfection.
But here's the catch. Even in this absolutely perfect scene, there's a problem. The followers of this celestial worthy, even though they are surrounded by all this divine light, they basically confess that they feel stuck, confused, lost. And that's a question that feels so incredibly modern, doesn't it? If the answers are all around us, why can't we see them?
And this gap between the truth that's everywhere and the confusion they feel inside, that's the story's first big puzzle, the divine mystery. The followers feel like, okay, we're living in a true treasury of wisdom, but our own minds are just cloudy. They feel trapped in what they call a world of dust, totally unable to grasp the truth that's literally right in front of their faces. And here's the first clue the celestial worthy gives them to start unraveling this mystery. He basically says your fundamental perception of reality is flawed. We look around and we see solid, separate things, but the scripture says everything is actually neither empty nor existent. We see ourselves as flawed, totally different from the divine, but the text insists we are equal to the celestial worthy. I mean, that is a radical shift in perspective right there.
So this is the really crucial point. The whole idea of cause and effect gets redefined. The ultimate cause of enlightenment, what the text calls the supreme cause, isn't something you find by doing more or seeking more or achieving more. No, it's found by not doing something, not raising the original mind. It's all about letting that restless, grasping, constantly chattering part of our awareness finally just become still. And that idea of stillness, well, that leads us to the most shocking, the most transformative idea in this entire scripture. This is really the part where the text just flips conventional wisdom completely on its head.
So a disciple asks a really straightforward question. On the path to enlightenment, every seeker is told to look for the 3 treasures that will guide them. So what are they?
Now, the traditional answer, the one everyone would expect, is something like this: the Tao itself, the sacred teachings or scriptures, and the master or guide who teaches you. These are all external, revered things that you're supposed to strive for. Makes perfect sense, right?
But the celestial worthy's answer is anything but conventional. He says the 3 treasures are greed, anger, and stupidity. Yeah, the very things we are told we need to eliminate from ourselves, the 3 poisons that are supposedly at the root of all our suffering, he says those are the treasures we've been looking for all along.
This is the absolute core of the teaching. These aren't evils that you need to destroy. They are raw, powerful energies that you need to understand and transform. So when the grasping, wanting nature of greed is calmed down, it actually reveals the structure of reality, the law. When the fiery, reactive nature of anger is allowed to just rest and not arise, it reveals your own inner guidance, the master. And when the cloudy nature of stupidity, or ignorance, is just seen for what it is without attachment, it reveals the fundamental path, the Tao itself.
Now, this is such a radical idea that the scripture doesn't just state it and move on. It illustrates it with this brilliant little story to make sure the lesson really sinks in.
Okay, so the story starts with a wise old master, a great physician who decides it's time to put his promising apprentice to the test. So he gets in bed and pretends he's on the verge of death.
Then he gives his student this bizarre prescription. He doesn't ask for some rare magical flower or a powerful root. No, he says the only thing that can possibly cure him is an herb that has absolutely no use at all.
So the devoted student, he takes this mission super seriously. He travels the entire world, examining every single leaf, every weed, every blade of grass he can find. And in this exhaustive search, he discovers something totally profound. Every single plant has a purpose. Some are food, some are medicine, some provide shelter, some enrich the soil. He realizes there's no such thing as a useless plant. So he returns to his master empty-handed and just heartbroken. He confesses that he's failed, admitting that a useless herb simply doesn't exist. But what he doesn't realize is that in that very moment of so-called failure, he has finally understood the deeper lesson.
And boom, that's the whole point. The master gets up, he's perfectly healthy, and he tells the student that this realization was the real test. By understanding that nothing in nature is truly useless, the student has finally gained the wisdom he needs to be a true healer. He gets it now. Everything has its place, and everything has its function.
Okay, so the story teaches us that nothing is truly useless. But what is all this ancient wisdom about poisons being treasures and herbs having a purpose? What does it actually mean for us today? Well, it basically gives us a kind of inner treasure map for applying this lesson to our own lives.
And the map is surprisingly simple. First, stop looking for some magic cure outside of yourself. The treasure isn't out there. Second, re-examine the things you dislike about yourself, your so-called poisons. Instead of just fighting your anger or judging your greed, get curious about its nature. What is this energy really? And third, try to see the world like the student did. Realize that everything has a true nature, a place, and a purpose, even the parts of you that you've labeled as useless or bad.
And the scripture is so clear on this point. It says the biggest mistake we can possibly make, the thing that is a slander to the true way, is refusing to believe that these treasures are already within our own roots. We're basically insulting the path when we insist that the solution has to be somewhere else.
And that really just leaves us with a final thought to reflect on. If we follow the logic of this incredible text, what's the thing in your life or in yourself that you've labeled as useless? As a poison? As something to be thrown away? What if that's exactly where your greatest treasure is hidden?